They said family would always protect you. I believed that until they stole my daughter's future. Ivy had earned her full-ride scholarship with nothing but sleepless nights and second-hand dreams. Then came a single envelope, thin, silent, and deadly. According to it, Ivy had declined the offer. But she hadn't. Someone else had. Someone close. What followed wasn't just betrayal, it was a war against the very people who were supposed to love us most. And the truth? It didn't just come out, it crashed down like a wave, dragging our family into pieces. I didn't scream, I acted, and everything changed. It started like any other Tuesday. Morning coffee gone cold on the counter, half-read emails blinking at me through a dusty laptop screen, and my daughter, Ivy, dancing quietly between dreams and reality. She had just graduated high school with every honour imaginable. The full-ride scholarship to Preston University was her golden ticket out of our patchworked life, out of second jobs, borrowed books, and the quiet fear of, what if we can't afford next month? Ivy had earned that dream. She didn't stumble into it. She clawed her way there, through sleepless nights, student council meetings, peer tutoring, and part-time work. I watched her push herself beyond breaking just to prove she belonged. So when I saw the plain white envelope on the kitchen counter that morning, I didn't think twice. It was thin, ordinary. I assumed it was something like dorm room details or a campus ID update. I didn't open it. I just called out, "Ivy, you've got mail!" with a smile that still makes my stomach twist today. She walked in, still in her pyjamas, and gave the envelope a glance, her entire body stilled. "What's wrong?" I asked, but she didn't answer. She just picked it up, fingers trembling slightly, and walked down the hallway. The silence that followed wasn't normal. It was too heavy, too still. I turned the stove off and followed her. Her bedroom door was slightly open. She sat on the edge of her bed, letter in hand, her knuckles white. "Mum," she said, and my name shattered. I took the letter from her, without a word. I had to read it twice. "We acknowledge your decision to decline the Preston Academic Excellence Scholarship. The award has been reassigned to the next qualifying candidate." The words didn't make sense. They blurred together like bad ink on cheap paper. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh you share with joy, but the broken sound that escapes when your brain is trying to reject reality. "You didn't decline this, right?" I asked. Her eyes met mine. Tears welled up, but she didn't cry yet. "Why would I?" she whispered. "This was everything." It was. She had framed the acceptance email. She baked brownies the day she got it. She memorized every line of the scholarship welcome packet. Declining that offer would have been like setting fire to a lifeboat. I grabbed the letter and my phone, fingers already dialing the number for Preston's financial aid office. Ivy sat beside me, unmoving. Not crying, just frozen. "Preston Financial Aid, this is Megan speaking," came a chirpy voice after 2 minutes of torture through hold music. "We received a letter saying my daughter declined her scholarship. That's a mistake," I said flatly. "May I have her student ID number?" I rattled it off. "One moment," Megan replied. I imagined every keystroke unlocking another piece of a puzzle I didn't want to see. There was a formal withdrawal sent from the email address we have on file. Monday evening, 7:42 p.m. My breath caught. "That's impossible," I said. "She didn't send anything. It came directly from her email. We've already reassigned the scholarship. I want a copy of that email, and read the address back to me." She did. Ivy's lips parted. "That's my email, but I didn't send anything." "We can forward the original message to that same address," Megan offered. I wanted to scream. "You're going to forward a fraudulent message back to the same account it was sent from. Do you not see the issue?" There was a pause. "If you believe an error has occurred, you may file a formal appeal. However, once a scholarship is reassigned, it's rarely reversible." "Who received it?" "I'm sorry, that's confidential." Of course it was. We hung up. Ivy didn't cry. Not then. She stared at the wall like it might tell her this was all a dream. Then her voice cracked. I almost believed I deserved it. And that's what broke me. Ivy didn't come out of her room for hours after that call. I stood in the hallway, holding the useless letter like it might still change if I read it enough times. My daughter, who had spent the last 4 years pushing through every wall life threw at her, had been undone by a single piece of paper. By dinner time, I knocked softly on her door. "You want something to eat?" No answer, just a muffled, "I'm fine." She wasn't. I left a plate outside her room anyway. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my phone, trying to figure out what to do next. The school wasn't going to help. Ivy's future had been handed to someone else, cleanly, legally, and with zero accountability. And still, something gnawed at me. Her email had been used. But Ivy hadn't sent it, which meant someone else had. Someone with access. Her password was saved only on her phone and her laptop, both secure. No one had borrowed them. No one except... No. I shook my head. That was crazy. We were a family. Still, the unease stuck to me like damp air. The next day, I made the mistake of mentioning the situation to my parents in a phone call. My mother sounded concerned, but in that distracted, perfunctory way. "Oh no, that's terrible. Maybe she changed her mind." "She didn't," I said. "She's devastated." "Well," my mother replied, "maybe she's just embarrassed to say she changed her mind. Teenagers do things without thinking." Something about her tone hit wrong, too casual, too dismissive. I spoke with my sister Angela later that evening, hoping for a little empathy. Ivy and her daughter Harper had grown up side by side. I thought maybe Angela would have some perspective, or at least offer a shoulder. Instead, I got a shrug I could hear through the phone. Maybe Ivy just panicked. It's a big step. College, leaving home, it's a lot. "She didn't send that email," I said, sharp this time. A pause, then laughter, light and easy. "Well, if you're sure. But kids get overwhelmed, Liv. Maybe this is just her way of backing out." Backing out? My daughter had cried over that scholarship. She talked about it in her sleep. She had planned her whole life around it. And now I was being told, by my own family, that maybe she just didn't want it enough? I ended the call quickly, claiming dinner was burning. It wasn't. I sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing, turning their words over in my head. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she panicked. Maybe she didn't want it. All of it boiled down to the same chilling conclusion. They didn't believe her. Or worse, they didn't care. That was the first moment I truly felt it. Not just suspicion, but something deeper. A fracture. A silent space where trust used to live. That evening, Ivy finally emerged. Her face was pale and her eyes hollowed out from silent crying. "Did you hear anything?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, nothing helpful." She nodded like she expected that. "I've been thinking," she said slowly. "Maybe I can defer a year, work, reapply somewhere else." My chest cracked a little more. She was trying to be strong, for me, maybe even for herself, but I could see the raw edges of her hope crumbling. "We'll figure something out," I said, though I didn't know what that something would be. We sat in silence, eating leftovers neither of us could taste. Then, almost absently, I asked, "Did Harper borrow your phone during the party?" Ivy blinked. "Yeah, she said hers died. Needed to call Liam." I nodded, filed it away, and changed the subject. I didn't want to believe it yet, but now the pieces had started moving. The memory of the graduation party played in my head like a film reel, grainy and tainted with hindsight. At the time, it had been nothing short of joyful. Ivy's acceptance letter was printed and taped to the fridge. There were brownies, paper lanterns in the backyard, a Spotify playlist Ivy had spent hours curating. She even insisted on inviting Harper and Angela, saying it wouldn't feel complete without them. Back then, I'd smiled and agreed. Harper and Ivy had been inseparable growing up. From kindergarten all the way to senior year, they'd shared sleepovers, study sessions, and a relentless belief in each other. But that night, now that I was rewatching it in my mind, held a different shade. It was around 7:30 when Harper had wandered up to Ivy, holding her dead phone like a prop in a school play. "Hey, can I borrow yours real quick?" she'd asked, pointing to Ivy's phone on the kitchen counter. "Sure," Ivy said without hesitation. I hadn't thought twice. None of us had. But now, sitting in the dim light of my living room, every second of that exchange felt radioactive. I pulled up the app, linked to our backyard security camera. It wasn't high-tech, just a simple motion-activated feed with audio. Usually we used it to check if the raccoons had come back or to yell at the neighbourhood kids not to climb the fence. But that night at 7:46 p.m, the camera caught movement. Harper. She stepped out onto the patio, Ivy's phone in hand. Her face was lit by the screen. She walked in slow circles, said something I couldn't quite make out, then laughed. A soft, comfortable kind of laugh, like someone enjoying a little secret. She tapped on the screen, stared, typed. At 7:50 p.m, she made a call. "Yeah, I'll let you know," she said, then turned and walked back inside. I froze the frame. It wasn't Ivy's usual phone case. This one had a little crack in the corner. Ivy had dropped hers last month. Harper's phone had a glittery pink case. I remembered because Ivy once said it looked like something out of a tween movie. This wasn't Harper's phone. It was Ivy's. I checked the timestamp again, 7:48 p.m. The same minute the scholarship withdrawal email had been sent. I sat back, cold settling in my stomach. I'd hoped, naively, maybe desperately, that there had been some kind of error, a server glitch, a prank, something impersonal, fixable. But now I had a face, a time, a phone, and worst of all, a motive. Ivy and Harper had both applied for the same scholarship. Ivy had gotten it. Harper had been waitlisted, first in line if someone dropped out. I closed the laptop slowly, my hand trembling. The pieces had lined up too perfectly. Ivy walked in, a glass of water in her hand. She paused when she saw my face. "What?" I hesitated, then asked, "Do you remember exactly what time Harper borrowed your phone that night?" She frowned, thinking, "Just before dessert. She said Liam was outside and she needed to give him directions." "Did she ever leave the patio?" "No, just stepped out back. Why?" I shook my head. "Just checking something." She looked unconvinced, but didn't press. I wasn't ready to tell her. Not yet. I needed more than a timestamp and a gut feeling. I needed certainty, but deep inside I already knew. That night, after Ivy had gone to bed, I sat down again with her phone. My fingers moved with mechanical precision, but inside everything trembled. I wasn't just a mother anymore, I had become something else. A silent detective, a witness, a potential executioner of trust. I opened her call history. The screen glared in the darkness. There it was. One outgoing call at 7:50 p.m, exactly matching the timestamp on the security footage. A number I didn't recognise, but it had a local area code, probably Liam. The email had been sent at 7:48 p.m. The call came just after. I stared at those two entries like they were the only truths in the world. Email, then call. Just like on the video, she sent the email, then made the call. Using Ivy's phone, on Ivy's graduation night. It wasn't just plausible anymore, it was real. I pulled the security footage again, watching Harper's expression. There was no panic, no hesitation, just calm, composed. She knew exactly what she was doing. The next morning, Ivy shuffled into the kitchen, looking exhausted. I didn't know if she'd slept at all. She poured herself some coffee and sat silently across from me. "I checked my phone logs," I said casually. She looked up, wary. "There was an outgoing call right after the time the email was sent." She frowned. "To Liam?" I nodded. 7:50 p.m, right after 7:48. Her face went still. That was the night of the party. Ivy stared at her mug for a long time before whispering, "She used my phone. She asked like it was nothing." She said hers was dead. A slow nod, then silence again. but this time it was heavier, denser. You think she... Ivy couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't answer right away. I don't know, I lied. Maybe. Her shoulders curled in on themselves. But why? I had theories, ugly ones that had Harper waitlisted, ones that had Angela whispering comfort while covering tracks. But I didn't say any of them. Ivy, I said gently, did Harper ever act weird about the scholarship? She hesitated. No, I mean she congratulated me. She even hugged me at the party, said she was proud. Before or after she borrowed your phone? She looked up at me, eyes narrowing with realization. After. That landed harder than either of us expected. Ivy leaned back in her chair and covered her mouth with one hand. I didn't want to think it, she said. I didn't want to believe it. You don't have to believe anything yet, I said, still trying to sound neutral. We don't know the full picture. But inside, I was screaming. The puzzle pieces weren't just fitting, they were locking in place. Ivy stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the quiet street. Do you think Mom and Dad know? The question stabbed harder than she realized. I hadn't even thought that far. I don't know, I repeated, and I didn't. But now that she said it, the possibility clung to me like a wet coat. The way Mum had dismissed Ivy's reaction, the way Angela had shrugged off my concern. It hadn't felt like ignorance. It felt like rehearsed detachment. I need to think, Ivy said. Clear my head. She went back to her room, leaving me alone with the silence and the weight of what I hadn't said. I wasn't ready to bring her into the full storm yet. She was still bleeding from the first cut, so I did what any mother would do. I started digging deeper, alone. I didn't tell Ivy where I was going. She was already carrying too much. I just told her I needed to run errands and grabbed the keys like it was any other Tuesday, but inside my blood hummed with tension, every muscle braced. I wasn't going shopping. I was going to see my sister. Angela lived across town in a freshly painted ranch-style house with a swing on the porch she never used. The front lawn was manicured, every flower pot in perfect symmetry. Like her life, it all looked charming until you stepped too close. She opened the door with a bright smile, the kind you put on for neighbours, PTA mums, or maybe for someone you're planning to lie to. Hey, this is a surprise, she chirped. Can I come in? I asked. She stepped aside, still smiling. Of course. Coffee? No, thanks. The kitchen was spotless, like always. She gestured to the stools at the island, but I stayed standing. I need to ask you something, I said. About Ivy. She leaned back against the counter, tilting her head like I'd asked her to recall a grocery list. Sure. Is everything okay? She lost her scholarship. Angela's smile faltered, only slightly, but enough. Oh no, she said slowly, like choosing the words from a menu. That's awful. I studied her face. We got a letter saying she declined it, but she didn't. Angela blinked. She didn't? No. A beat of silence. Then she reached for a dish towel and started wiping a counter that was already clean. Well, maybe she had second thoughts, she offered lightly. I mean, kids get nervous. She didn't. We checked with the school. The email came from her account. The timestamp matched the night of her graduation party. Another pause, another carefully neutral expression. I just thought maybe it was cold feet. She was ecstatic. You saw her that night. Angela nodded, then turned to the window. Yeah, she was. Almost too ecstatic. That made my skin prickle. What does that mean? I asked. She turned back, folding the towel slowly. Nothing, just she's always been driven. Maybe a little too much. Makes it hard for the other kids. I stared at her. Angela smiled again, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Harper was devastated when she got waitlisted, you know. Ivy helped her with those essays, I snapped. She stayed up editing drafts. She cheered her on. Angela's voice dropped, calm and saccharine. And don't you think that says something about her? She's so capable, so strong. She'll be fine. The implication struck me like a slap. Angela saw it on my face and shrugged. Look, all I'm saying is, sometimes the strong ones can afford to let go, to give someone else a chance. I couldn't breathe. Are you saying she should have given up her scholarship? Angela gave a little shrug. I'm just saying, maybe the universe works things out for the best. Maybe Harper needed it more. I took a step forward. That wasn't the universe, Angela. That was someone sending a fake email from Ivy's account. Her gaze held mine, steady, unapologetic. And that was when I knew. She knew. She didn't look confused. She didn't ask questions. She was stalling, redirecting, protecting. Angela placed the towel down and said, with a soft sigh, Ivy will be fine, Liv. She always lands on her feet. But what about the people who push her off the cliff? Angela didn't answer. She just smiled. And for the first time, I felt it in my bones. My sister had helped destroy my daughter's future. I didn't speak for a few seconds. I needed to make sure my voice wouldn't come out as a scream. Angela had crossed a line. No, she'd obliterated it. And she stood there like we were debating the weather. You knew, I said, my voice low. You knew what Harper did. She didn't answer. You were there the whole time, watching Ivy help her, encouraging it. You smiled while she handed Harper everything, and you let her take more. Angela picked up a glass, filled it slowly at the sink, like she hadn't just been accused of helping commit fraud. It's not as black and white as you think, she said. Don't patronize me. She turned, leaned on the counter, and sipped her water like we were having brunch. We didn't think Ivy would take it so hard. We? That single word burned. Angela hesitated, then exhaled. I mean, Mom and Dad and I, we talked. We just figured Harper needed it more. Ivy is resilient. I took a step back like the air had been knocked out of me. You talked? About taking her future? She didn't even blink. We were worried about Harper. She's been struggling, the pressure, her anxiety. You know how she is. Yeah, I said, my voice cracking. I also know how Ivy is. She works through every obstacle. She doesn't complain. And you all punished her for that. Angela gave a faint, dismissive shake of her head. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic. I stepped forward, my hands clenched. My daughter was robbed. You let your child impersonate her and send a false withdrawal. That's not dramatic. That's illegal. Angela's smile faded slightly, but she didn't waver. You don't have proof. I stared at her. Not yet. Another shrug. Well, if you think calling the cops is going to fix it, go ahead. But all you're going to do is tear the family apart. The family tore itself apart when you chose Harper over Ivy, I said, heat rising in my chest. Angela set the glass down and finally met my eyes. Liv, Ivy's smart. She'll land on her feet. Harper might not. You know that. This was for the greater good. We all agreed. That's when the floor fell out from under me. We all agreed. The words echoed like a curse. You told Mom and Dad? Angela's silence answered before her nod did. They knew? My voice cracked. They knew and they said nothing? They agreed, she said simply. They understood why it had to be done. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just betrayal. It was collusion. A full-blown conspiracy of silence from the people I had once believed would die to protect my daughter. I stumbled back a step, dizzy. You were supposed to love her, I whispered. All of you. Angela didn't look away. We do love her. That's why we didn't want this to explode. We knew you'd react. You thought I'd react. My laugh came out sharp, brittle. Someone stole my child's future. You're damn right I'm going to react. Angela folded her arms, her calm now condescending. You're blowing this way out of proportion. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. You have no idea what I'm capable of when you hurt my kid. She sighed. Liv, let it go. What's done is done. I turned toward the door. I'll be in touch, I said coldly. Don't drag the whole family into this, she called after me. I didn't respond, because she was too late. They were already in it. I didn't cry when I left Angela's house. I didn't scream or hit the steering wheel or let the betrayal swallow me whole. I drove home in silence, both hands on the wheel, jaw locked so tight it ached. There was no room left for grief, only precision. I walked through the door like any other evening, kissed Ivy on the forehead and told her to get some rest. She nodded absently. Her eyes were red again. I waited until she closed her door before I opened my laptop. The footage from the backyard camera was still queued. I replayed it, not because I needed to see it again, but because I needed to absorb every frame. Harper on the patio, tapping Ivy's phone, smirking, calling her boyfriend, walking back inside like nothing happened. 7:48 p.m. Email sent, 7:50 p.m. Call made. That was my timeline. Next, I opened Ivy's phone log and screen captured the outgoing call. I matched it to the camera footage and overlaid the timestamps. Then I printed it out, one page at a time. I added screenshots of Ivy's inbox showing no record of the withdrawal email, not even in drafts or sent items, because whoever sent it had deleted the evidence. Sloppy, but damning. Then I compiled Harper's scholarship status. Waitlisted. First in line if another student forfeits their offer. A line that now reeked of premeditation. I added Ivy's original acceptance letter, her GPA, her volunteer records, her essay drafts with feedback notes from Harper herself, notes that showed Ivy had been helping her cousin improve, not compete. The more I stacked the evidence, the colder I became. By the time I finished, the folder was an inch thick. Proof and poison. It was nearly midnight when I logged into Preston University's Student Services portal and opened the formal complaint form. I uploaded every file, every screenshot, and wrote the timeline down to the minute. When it asked for a narrative, I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time before I began. This is not a technical error. It is identity theft committed by a close family member who used my daughter's phone to sabotage her future for personal gain. Please see attached evidence. I hit submit. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed the non-emergency number for our local police department. I'd like to report impersonation and digital fraud, I said calmly. The woman on the line asked for my name, then the victim's. My daughter, she's 17. And what was stolen? Her future. The pause was longer than I expected. Ma'am? A full academic scholarship, I clarified. It was fraudulently declined via email, and I have reason to believe it was done intentionally using her own device while in the presence of the suspect. The woman took the details without commentary, but I could sense it in her voice, that moment when the story shifted from strange to serious. She scheduled an appointment for an in-person report the following afternoon. When I finally crawled into bed, Ivy was asleep, curled into herself like a child despite all her strength. I pulled the blanket up around her and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time watching her breathe. We had done everything right, and they had still come for her. Not strangers, not the world, her own blood. The next morning I printed a second set of the documents. I labelled them University and Police. Ivy watched me quietly from the table, a piece of toast untouched in front of her. "What are you doing?" she asked. I slid the folder across to her. "Submitting this." She flipped through the first few pages, her eyes widening. "You found all this?" "I did." "But will it work?" I hesitated. "It might." She exhaled, a sound somewhere between disbelief and hope. "Do you think they'll believe me?" I looked at her, this girl who had worked and dreamed and built her future with blistered hands, and I saw something flicker behind her exhaustion. "I don't care if they believe you," I said, "because I do, and that's where we start." The doorbell rang late that afternoon, just as I finished scanning the last copy of our documents for backup. Ivy was upstairs, headphones on, trying to distract herself with some documentary she'd already watched twice. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. It was my parents. They stood there like a pair of polite ghosts. My father with his hands clasped in front of him, my mother holding a bakery box that felt suddenly grotesque. "We brought those pumpkin scones you like," my mother said, her voice bright but strained. I didn't invite them in. I stepped aside, just enough for formality. They walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. My mother set the box down and glanced at the folders on the counter. "What's all this?" she asked too lightly. I didn't answer. I folded my arms. "We heard from Angela," my father started, measured and calm. "She said you're escalating things." "Escalating?" I said, voice flat. He nodded. "Calling the university. The police." "I'm not escalating, I'm responding." My mother stepped in. "Liv, darling, we know you're upset, but this could really get out of hand." "It's already out of hand." She exchanged a glance with my father. "Do you really want to make this public? Think about how it will look for the family." And there it was. Twist the knife, twist the truth, and God forbid it becomes messy enough to affect their reputation. "So you came here because you're worried about your image?" I asked, heat rising behind my eyes. "We're worried about you," my father said carefully. "No, you're worried about Harper, about Angela, about the whispers at church. Don't pretend it's me." My mother frowned. "It's not that simple." "It is," I snapped. Ivy's future was stolen, not lost, stolen. And you're more concerned with keeping it quiet. My father stepped forward, placating. "Honey, Ivy's strong. She'll get another opportunity." "That's not the point," I shouted. The words echoed. And then Ivy was there, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, barefoot, wrapped in her favourite hoodie, eyes wide. "Grandma! Grandpa!" They turned, softened their faces, like masks snapping into place. My mother opened her arms. "Sweetheart." But Ivy didn't move. She looked at me instead. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then said simply, "They don't want us to go through with it." Ivy stared. "Why?" My parents flinched under her gaze. No more childlike innocence, just quiet, searing comprehension. "For the family," my mother offered gently. Ivy's face crumpled, not into tears, but into disbelief. "So you're saying I should just accept it?" "Sometimes it's better not to create a storm over a mistake," my father murmured. "A mistake?" Ivy's voice cracked. My hands trembled at my sides. "She didn't just lose a scholarship," I said, eyes burning into them. "She was sabotaged. By family, by your silence." Neither of them denied it. That was worse than words. The consent, the quiet nod to betrayal. Ivy turned to me, her voice small. "Maybe I should let it go. Maybe it's not worth it." "No." I crossed the room and took her hands. "Don't let them make you smaller. You didn't just lose money. You lost your right to be believed, to be protected." She didn't cry, but she folded into me like she might collapse. I looked over her shoulder, straight at my parents. "We're done pretending," I said. "This isn't about peace. It's about truth. And we're not backing down." My mother looked like she might speak, but my father gently placed a hand on her arm. They both turned without a word and left. The door closed behind them like the end of a chapter. But I knew this story wasn't over. It was only now beginning. It took me 2 days to convince Ivy to come with me. She didn't want to see them, not after that kitchen ambush, not after the silence that screamed louder than any denial, but I needed her to. Not just for closure, but so she could hear it with her own ears. So she'd stop blaming herself for a decision that was never hers. We didn't bring anger, we brought evidence. The manila folder sat heavy in my lap as I drove us across town. Ivy didn't speak. She stared out the window, her expression unreadable. My parents lived in the same house I grew up in, white siding, green shutters, a front porch that had seen decades of birthday balloons and Thanksgiving welcome mats. Today it felt like a courtroom. They greeted us like it was a Sunday brunch. My mother offered a tight smile, my father a nod and an unnecessary, "You girls hungry?" Ivy shook her head. I didn't respond. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was firm, not angry, just final. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Ivy used to eat cookies after school, where I once practiced my multiplication tables under their watchful eyes. I placed the folder in the centre. Before they could deflect, I opened it. First the email, withdrawal time-stamped at 7:48 p.m, then the phone log, outgoing call to Harper's boyfriend at 7:50 p.m, then the security footage, Harper on our patio, Ivy's phone in hand. Then the scholarship status update. Harper moved from waitlist to recipient the next day. Lastly, Ivy's original acceptance letter. Bright, proud, damning. I looked up. "Before we say anything else, I want you to see what we've brought. I want you to know this isn't just suspicion, it's fact." They flipped through the pages slowly, silently. When my mother finally spoke, she didn't look at me. She looked at Ivy. "She's just a child." Ivy flinched, like she'd been slapped. "She's 17, I said, voice cold. "And she committed fraud." "She made a mistake," my father added. "She was under pressure." Ivy's hands clenched in her lap. "She's a good kid," my mother continued. "She just got desperate. She didn't mean for it to go so far." I stared at them, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "You think she did it," I said. "You're not even questioning it. You know she did it." They didn't deny it. "We thought you might come," my mother admitted. "Angela told us everything." "Everything?" I asked, my voice cracking. "So you knew? You knew she used Ivy's phone? You knew she sent the email?" "We didn't do anything," my father said quickly. "We just agreed." "Agreed to what?" I asked. "That Harper needed it more," my mother said simply. That was it, the quiet confession. Ivy stood up, her chair scraping hard against the tile. "You helped her take it from me." "No one took anything," my mother snapped, her voice rising for the first time. "It stayed in the family." I stood too. "No," I said. "It didn't stay in the family, it was stolen." "She was devastated," my father said. "We knew you'd take it badly, that's why we didn't say anything. She's not as strong as Ivy." Ivy let out a short, bitter laugh. "So you just let her lie?" My mother didn't respond. "We didn't want this to get ugly," my father added. "And now you've involved the police. What did you think would happen?" "I thought I'd find out who betrayed us," I said quietly. "I didn't think it would be all of you." My mother shook her head. "You're being cruel." "No," Ivy said, voice low but steady. "You are." The silence that followed was the most honest moment of the afternoon. I gathered the folder, closed it gently. "We came here hoping you'd do the right thing," I said. "Not for an apology, just for truth." My mother looked away. My father said nothing. Ivy turned toward the door. "We're done here," she said. And for once, I didn't argue. We left without finishing the conversation, because there was nothing left to say. We had almost reached the car when my father called out behind us. "Wait!" Ivy turned slowly, warily. My father stepped out onto the porch, my mother just behind him, arms folded, lips tight. "There's something we should say," he said, but he wasn't looking at Ivy. He was looking at me. I didn't answer. I waited. He took a breath, like someone preparing to explain away a bad investment. We talked with Angela before it happened. She came to us, told us she was thinking of sending the email." My stomach dropped. Ivy's hand gripped mine tighter. "You knew before?" I asked, stunned. My mother stepped in. She was scared. Harper had been spiraling. Her grades, her anxiety. She didn't think she'd get into any other schools. Angela was desperate. You advised her to do it? My voice was ice. We didn't advise, my father said quickly. We just understood. You understood stealing? My mother's face hardened. We understood that Harper needed help, more than Ivy did. Ivy made a sound, raw, animal. She stepped forward, her face blazing. Then what am I? She shouted. If Harper needed help more, what does that make me? Just someone in the way? Honey, no, Ivy snapped. Don't honey me. Don't pretend like you didn't choose her over me. You saw what she did. You knew, and you let it happen. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. I worked for that scholarship. Every night I stayed up studying. Every weekend I skipped parties. Every time I said no to something fun. That was me building my future, and you let her take it. We didn't know she'd go through with it, my mother murmured, suddenly unsure. Ivy's voice dropped, but it was even sharper now. Yes, you did. You just hoped she wouldn't get caught. They didn't respond. The air between us was thick with betrayal, no longer hidden, no longer hinted at, open, plain, cold. Ivy turned to me, her chest heaving. I want to send it, she whispered. I didn't need to ask what she meant. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling, and opened the family group chat, the one filled with vacation photos, birthday reminders, Happy New Year texts and emojis. She attached 4 files. Screenshot of the withdrawal email, screenshot of the outgoing call log, still frame from the backyard security video. Timeline document Olivia had prepared. Then she typed a message. Harper used my phone to send the withdrawal. Angela knew, Grandma and Grandpa knew. You can believe it or not, but this is what happened. She hovered for a second, then hit send. The little delivered checkmark popped up instantly. No one responded, not a single scene. Ivy stared at the screen for a few more seconds, then opened the group info and hit Leave Conversation. Confirm, yes. Then she went to each family member's contact. Block, block, block. One by one, she erased them. When she looked up at me again, her face was unreadable. I don't think I have a family anymore. I stepped closer, touched her cheek. You do, I said. You have me. She nodded once. I turned to the porch where my parents still stood like statues, watching the unravelling they helped create. I hope you understand something, I said, my voice calm now. We're not angry anymore. We're done. My mother opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. No, we're done. And then we walked away. Not fast, not fleeing, just leaving behind something that no longer deserved to be called home. The house was too quiet. It had been days since we walked away from my parents' front porch, but the silence clung like fog. Ivy barely left her room. She moved through the house like a ghost, not angry, not broken, just empty. And still, the university said nothing. No reply to the formal complaint, no confirmation of receipt. Just that same cursed silence we'd grown used to from people who should have cared. I checked the portal every morning and every evening. Status under review. But it hadn't changed in a week. I left voicemails, sent polite follow-ups, attached new files, even contacted a dean through LinkedIn. Nothing. Ivy stopped asking. She didn't talk much at all anymore. She'd lie on the couch with a blanket over her lap, eyes scanning the same paragraph of a book for hours. She wasn't sulking, she was waiting, and that was worse. One night, after microwaving leftovers neither of us ate, I sat beside her and tried again to offer hope. They're probably just slow. Bureaucracy is... It's done, she said quietly. What is? All of it. There's no scholarship, no college. It's over. I turned to her, saw the dull ache behind her eyes. Don't say that, she shrugged. They didn't believe me. They probably think I'm making it up, that I'm bitter or embarrassed or trying to cover a mistake. And honestly, can you blame them? My throat tightened. Yes, I can, she shook her head. They believed Harper, or they didn't care either way, same outcome. I wanted to argue, to push back, but the truth was, she wasn't wrong. Ivy had done everything right and was still left stranded, while the people who hurt her were protected by convenience and silence. Later that night, after she went to bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to find a crack in the wall we'd hit, but all I saw was that same portal status, under review. Then at 2:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. At first I thought it was spam. The number was unfamiliar, but the message stopped my breath cold. "Hey, it's Jules. I saw what Ivy posted in the group. I hope this isn't crossing a line, but I forwarded it to a friend at Hopeway Foundation. I thought maybe it's worth a try." Jules, my second cousin on my dad's side. We hadn't spoken in months, since some funeral or baby shower I couldn't even remember. But she was always kind, always quiet, and apparently always paying attention. I reread the message 3 times, unsure if I was dreaming. Hopeway Foundation. They weren't just another scholarship pool. They specialised in emergency funding for students affected by hardship or discrimination. I'd read about them years ago when Ivy first started applying to colleges, but their application process was by referral only. I tapped out a shaky reply. "Jules, thank you. Anything helps. Truly," she replied a minute later. I didn't include her name at first. Just said a relative had overwhelming proof of academic fraud. "I'll send the folder now if that's okay." "Yes, please. Send everything." The next morning I waited until Ivy wandered into the kitchen before I said anything. "Someone might be looking into your case," I said casually. She frowned. "The university?" "No, Hopeway Foundation. Jules sent them your file." Her brows furrowed. "Jules? From the lake house trips?" I nodded. She blinked. "Why?" "Because she saw what you posted. And she believed you." Ivy didn't speak for a long time, but her hands trembled just slightly as she lifted her coffee. We didn't dare hope too much. Not yet. We'd been burned once. Hope had teeth. But still, something shifted in the room. A current. A breath. A spark. 3 days later, the call came. It was mid-morning. I was folding laundry when my phone rang with an unknown number. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something, instinct maybe, told me to answer. "Hello?" "Hi, is this Olivia Grant?" a warm female voice asked. "Yes." "This is Renee Thompson from the Hopeway Foundation. We received a referral recently regarding your daughter Ivy." My heart seized in my chest. "Yes," I said, sitting down slowly on the couch. "Yes, that's us. I just wanted to let you know we reviewed the case, including all the evidence. It was, honestly, one of the clearest examples of academic sabotage we've seen." I didn't know what to say. "Ivy's story was heartbreaking," Renee continued, "but her strength and your dedication stood out. We've decided to award her a full academic grant, effective immediately." I pressed a hand to my mouth, breath catching. "Everything will be covered," she said. "Tuition, books, housing. She'll be starting with our foundation's scholarship recipients this term. No strings attached." I choked back a sob. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just let her know we see her, we believe her, and we're honoured to support her." When I hung up, I sat there in stunned silence. The folded laundry spilled onto the floor, but I couldn't move. Then I ran. Ivy was in her room, curled up with a notebook in her lap, the pages mostly blank. "You're in," I whispered. She blinked up at me. "What?" "Hopeway. They're giving you a full ride. Everything. Starting now." It took her a few seconds to register. Then she dropped the notebook and covered her mouth, eyes widening, glistening. "You're serious?" I nodded, tears already falling. "I'm in?" "You're in?" She didn't cry right away. She sat there stunned, then stood and hugged me so tight I thought we'd both collapse. The moment cracked something wide open in us, not just relief, not just joy, but vindication, like our fight had meant something, like maybe, just maybe, the world had a shred of justice left. We stayed wrapped in each other's arms for a long time, not needing words. We had them already. In paper trails and timestamps and shattered silence, hope didn't just arrive, it kicked the damn door down. And then, like life always does, it twisted again. 2 days later, I got a call from the local precinct. "This is Detective Marsh," the officer said. "We've concluded our initial investigation into the digital impersonation claim. Are you available to discuss findings?" I drove straight there, folder in hand, Ivy waiting at home. The station smelled like coffee and anxiety. Marsh met me in a side room, kind but businesslike. "We were able to trace the origin of the email to Ivy's device," he began. "As suspected, the message was sent during a time when Ivy did not have the phone in her possession." "Yes, Harper used it," I said. "That's all in the file." "She did," he confirmed. "But there's more." I sat forward. We examined metadata, including IP access logs. We also subpoenaed a cloud backup linked to the email. What we found was telling. He slid a document toward me. It wasn't Harper who drafted the withdrawal email. Not initially. It was forwarded to her as a pre-written draft. I stared at the paper, trying to process. It originated from another device, one registered to Angela Bennett. My heart stopped. "She wrote it," I said, barely above a whisper. "She did," Marsh confirmed. Then instructed Harper to send it from Ivy's phone. That way it would appear authentic. My fingers tightened around the armrest of the chair. Angela Bennett is being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and academic sabotage. What about Harper? She's being treated as a juvenile accomplice. She'll face disciplinary measures, but her actions were under adult direction. The court will weigh that heavily. I nodded slowly. "Thank you." When I told Ivy, she didn't cheer, she didn't smile, she just closed her eyes and whispered, "Finally." Because it wasn't about revenge, it was about being seen. The courtroom wasn't like the ones on TV. There were no gasps from the gallery, no dramatic gavel smashes, no fiery closing statements. Just beige walls, tired carpet, and a judge with more files than patience. Angela stood in front of the bench with her lawyer, spine straight, chin high, but even from where I sat, I could see the faint tremor in her hands. The confidence she once weaponized like a shield had cracked. The charges were read aloud without flourish: conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, academic sabotage. Her attorney tried to downplay her role, claimed emotional duress, maternal panic, concern for a struggling daughter. But the evidence was airtight. The judge didn't need theatrics, just facts. She was found guilty. Sentence: 300 hours of community service, a $10,000 fine, and 1 year of probation. It wasn't prison, but it was public, official, and permanent. Harper's fate was handed down administratively. Preston University rescinded her admission offer. The academic board blacklisted her from receiving any institutional or third-party scholarships for the next 5 years. She wasn't expelled, she hadn't technically started, but her academic record would reflect the incident permanently. The statement from the university was brief. "Integrity is the foundation of all scholarship. We will not reward deception, regardless of motive." Ivy didn't ask to attend the hearings. She said she'd already lost enough time to them. Instead, she stayed home, packing for her move to campus. The morning after the sentencing, I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the street. The wind was light. Ivy stepped outside, dragging her suitcase behind her. "You sure you've got everything?" I asked. She nodded, then hesitated. "One more thing." She walked back inside, returned with her phone, and held it out to me. "I'm deleting the group chat from my backup, forever." She pressed a few buttons. A prompt appeared. "Delete conversation from all devices." Yes. She exhaled like she was releasing a weight she'd carried too long. "Done," she whispered. We loaded the car in silence. Her dorm checklist was meticulous. She'd planned everything down to the drawer organizers and bed risers. I recognized it as what it was: control. After months of chaos, she was rebuilding her space from scratch. When we reached the campus, Hopeway volunteers greeted her like family. She got a scholarship hoodie, a welcome binder, and a student ID with the words Foundation Recipient printed in gold. She looked at it for a long time. "They believed me," she said softly. "They did," I replied, "because you made them listen." She turned, gave me a long, wordless hug. Then she walked toward her building, shoulders squared, head high. I didn't cry, not then. I waited until I got home, sat in the quiet of her empty room, and finally let the tears come, not for the pain, but for the fight. And the fact that somehow she won. Angela was spotted weeks later, cleaning graffiti off city benches. Harper transferred to a local community college, her application stamped with a flag that would follow her everywhere. I never heard from my parents again. They didn't call after the verdict, didn't text Ivy when her scholarship was reinstated. They disappeared into the same silence they used to justify their betrayal. And that silence? It was a gift, because it left space for something better. Ivy started sending me photos from campus, her dorm desk, her study group, a blurry picture of her laughing with new friends at a late-night diner. She joined the debate team, took on tutoring shifts, applied for a summer research fellowship, and got it. One night while I was doing dishes, she called. "I just wanted to say thanks," she said, "for not giving up, for seeing me when no one else did." "I didn't see you," I replied. "You showed me." She laughed. "Still, I wouldn't be here without you." My throat tightened. "You'd be somewhere else maybe, but not less." Later, I sat with a cup of tea and scrolled through the family photos on my phone. I deleted the ones with Angela, then the ones from Harper's birthday, then the group pictures with my parents, forced smiles and stiff arms. I replaced them with something else, a photo of Ivy, standing on the campus green, arms wide, laughing into the wind. A reminder of what survived, what rose. They thought they could erase her future. All they did was write the ending to their own. The campus was buzzing with the kind of energy only the start of a new year could bring, laughter echoing through dorm halls, students dragging carts full of notebooks and dreams, RA signs taped to every door. It was a world rebuilding itself in real time, and Ivy was right in the middle of it. She moved differently now, not cautiously, not like someone recovering from betrayal, but like someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger, sharper. She was no longer just surviving, she was claiming her space. Her dorm room was modest, 2 beds, 2 desks, and a view of a brick courtyard, but Ivy had made it her own within days. A corkboard filled with affirmations, a bookshelf colour-coded by genre, a tiny potted plant she named Mercy. "Because," she told me laughing, "sometimes you need to give yourself some." We texted more than we called. She was always busy. Study groups, orientation events, an early internship she somehow landed within a week. But each message she sent was like a heartbeat. "I'm doing it, Mum. Guess who led our discussion today? I just said no to a guy trying to cut ahead in the laundry room. Progress, right?" "Yes, progress." Then, one afternoon, while I was prepping dinner and humming to the rhythm of my ordinary piece, I got an email. The sender's name froze me. Elaine Bennett, Angela's twin sister, Ivy's godmother, the one who had said nothing. She had been silent through everything, never responded to Ivy's group message, never reached out when the scholarship was lost, when it was restored, when the verdict was handed down. She didn't defend us, didn't condemn anyone either. She just disappeared into neutrality. But here she was, finally speaking. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I hovered for a moment, then clicked. "Olivia, I've been thinking about you and Ivy every day. I know I should have said something sooner, but I didn't know what to say." I froze. I was afraid of upsetting the family. I told myself staying out of it was the neutral thing to do. But I realised now that silence was a choice, and it was the wrong one. You and Ivy deserved better. You still do. "I'm sorry for not standing up. I'm sorry for not saying anything when it mattered. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I see that now." Elaine. I read it twice, then once more. It was the apology I'd wanted 100 times before, thought about, imagined. But now it felt late, too late. Because in the end, Elaine had chosen comfort over courage, silence over loyalty. And while her words were well written, they came after the damage was done. After Ivy had rebuilt from the wreckage. After we had found a way forward without her. I didn't reply, I didn't rage or engage, I simply clicked block sender. Then I closed my laptop, walked outside and stood in the fading sun. There was something about that final act, not angry, just final, that gave me peace. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting on anyone's apology, explanation or acknowledgement. I had everything I needed. Later that evening, Ivy called. She was sitting in a hammock behind her dorm, the breeze tangling her curls. "Guess what?" she beamed. "I got invited to a faculty dinner next month." I smiled. "I hope you eat all their shrimp." She laughed. "I plan to." We talked about classes, about her plans for fall break, about nothing and everything. Before hanging up, she said, "You know, I still think about them sometimes." I nodded. "I do too." "But it doesn't hurt the same," she added. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." Because the cycle of betrayal had ended not with revenge, but with release. We didn't need justice to heal, but we'd fought for it anyway. We didn't need them to come back, but we'd survived their absence. And we didn't need anyone else's permission to move forward. We already had our own. Ivy was no longer the girl who'd cried over a thin white envelope, and I was no longer the woman who waited for her family to do the right thing. We were new, whole, and we weren't looking back.